Hi, I'm gonna be honest. I should probably change the name. So just call me. So after playing Elden Ring for around 2 months now, I'd say it is definitely one of the best games I have ever played. Some of the most fun I've had in any game is just exploring the beautiful world of Elden Ring, and I don't like open world games that much. But whatever. This is not a review, this is just a top 10, and this doesn't mean the game is flawless, as I will hopefully soon talk about in my next video on some of its worst bosses. Because trust me, the worst bosses of Elden Ring are some of the worst FromSoft bosses, just in general. Just like how it has some of the worst bosses though, it also has some of the best FromSoft you've ever made. Honestly, the amount of just S tier bosses in this game, it's actually insane. But whatever, let's just go on to the video before I spend another hour talking about how amazing Elden Ring actually is. There's only one real rule of the video to mention, which is that the only thing that counts as bosses to me is that they have to be great enemies. If it's a fucking flying dragon, that counts. This is a boss. If you can't put the effort into it, you don't get a freebie with this. Now, it doesn't really matter that much for this video, but for just in general, it goes from S to F tier. S tier is like top 10 worthy for me. I need to actually be able to consider you for my top 10. F tier means fuck you. So we're off to a great start because Placidus is arguably one of the, if not the most beloved bosses in all of Elden Ring, and I can understand why, but first before I do any explanation of why it's on the list, let me just explain why it's not higher on the list. Now let me just say, Placidus is an excellent boss. It's A tier for me. That means I think it's personally great, but there are just a few factors that I feel people ignore or just do not care for that I feel just lower it down as an overall experience for me. Now I'm going to start off with an issue that isn't a full-on issue, but is a part of the fight that I do not enjoy. But if it was great, it still would not be higher on the list. So do not think this is why I put it down. But I personally found the run-up quite poor with Placidus, and there are bad run-ups in the series. Medeiros is also very bad, but the thing is, Placidus, there's Marika statues. You have a design choice that fixes this issue. There's no excuse for Placidus really. But the actual reasons Placidus isn't higher are mostly, in my opinion, to do with the fight. There is one, but that's run-up. I can ignore that if the fight's good enough. Medeiros is a shit run-up, but he's also one of my favorite fights in the series. But the thing is, Placidus, I just found the fight awkward camera-wise was a big thing. When I was fighting it, a lot of the time with the flame side attack, I would just tank the hit instead of bother trying to dodge it, because I couldn't tell what it was coming for, or if it was that attack in particular. I also found that its ultimate move was kind of the most anticlimactic ultimate move in the game, or at least one of them. After it has all these amazing teleport attacks, we would teleport around you, dodge. I was expecting something really cool from this massive dragon, but instead it just copies Medeiros' laser, but it's twice, which sure I guess is cool, but then also it's not very well designed because it scares you away, but then you actually have to run towards it to have any chance of dodging without luck. So but if you were out of stamina, you're running away from it or something, or you just have a bad distance, you're fucked, which is just not very good in my opinion. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, this boss is not surpassing Medeiros for me, but still, it is an amazing boss. I love the teleporting. The atmosphere in this boss is it is S tier. The music, the way it cuts out when it does its AoE, the way the AoE you can actually tell the range of is just perfect. It is a great fight. I especially love its claw attacks. Whenever it teleports claws, that is the most badass shit in the game. But sadly, due to a combo of just this fight not really being for me, it's just I like my faster beasts. I like Medeiros, Demon Prince, Ludwig's. I like something that is against you physically. Placidus a lot of the time will just sit down besides the claw, and it isn't very fast, which that's fine. That's its design, but that's just not for me, which means that I would actually put it as one of the 10 instead of top 3 or anything. It is still a great fight, and I'm glad if anyone else loves it, because it is very well designed. It's just not for me, to be honest. That's all I can really say for it. Still, probably the best done spectacle in the game. I personally, I find that a lot of the time spectacle fights aren't good fights. They're either just sitting there in the tank or some gimmick, which in my opinion works better a lot of the times. But Placidus actually managed to find a perfect balance. Anyways, before I literally get killed for sacrilege against God Placidus, I'm just gonna go on to number 9, which will probably offend even more people, so that'll be fun. So this may just end up being the most controversial boss placement in the list because Placidusax is considered better than Fortisax, and Fortisax isn't even considered top 10 by most players. But trust me, I do actually have a reason for preferring Fortisax instead of just wanting to be like different. There is a reason there. First off, besides the fact that I find Fortisax slightly low in challenge, only taking around 30 minutes if even my first playthrough to beat them, I also just find them more fun, and I find there's less downtime between their attacks compared to Placidusax. But this is not me saying one is better than the other. I actually struggled a long time to choose between these two. I'm deciding to choose Fortisax over Placidusax just because of personal factors more than anyone being better than the other. A big thing for Fortisax for me was the surprise, as when I met Lanciax after how hyped they were on the trailer, I was actually very disappointed, finding it quite an underwhelming, bland fight, kind of more boring than some of the mini-bosses you would meet. So when I met Fortisax, I was very excited to actually get full-on electric dragon fight that I'd always wanted, and I just found it really fun just to dodge his moves and combos. But while I do think the fight is very fun, I do think easy, but the thing that really carried Fortisax for me was the lore and the atmosphere, which is just, it's so good. As you meet this dragon corrupted by rot of the death virus nearly, and you just see them covered in the spines that you get covered in when you get it. This just shows that they are truly being rotted from the inside, losing their actual previous noble form. And it's just such a cool thing to see. Their form is actually so cool that actually being able to compare it to Lanciax almost makes Lanciax worthwhile just to see the difference in them. And you look around in this arena, which is just one of the best in the series, as you see this night sky disrupted, disturbing painting in the background as you fight this dragon. But what I feel is a good way that they made it so Fortisax isn't just lightning Midir but slower, because it is still slower than Midir. Midir is just an apex in speed and ferocity. What they did was they made it so that you actually have to switch between the head, because the head is not always there for you to hit. So you kind of need to plan out your moves, like when he's doing this attack you go for the legs. You'll actually still do good damage. And this is, in my opinion, a fun way to make it a unique dragon boss, that makes it stand out instead of just being Lightning Midir, which I thought it was going to be when I first met it. Overall, they're probably my third or fourth favorite dragon boss in the series, only behind Midir, possibly Calamite, and probably Divine Dragon. So I need to do some research, but replay Dark Souls 1, but at the moment they're that level for me. On to number 8. Hopefully this time it won't be a dragon boss. I have heard a lot of mixed reviews on Malekith. People would call them the worst boss due to being too pathetic, the best boss due to challenge, or just a mixed. There's no real common consensus on Malekith. Personally, for me, they've changed quite a bit. My first playthrough, I enjoyed them quite a bit, but I also found them a bit easier than most, probably because I could tank the hits, but I also just didn't like them that much. I loved Phase 2, but Phase 1 was not for me. But still, on my second playthrough, that is when I truly fell in love with Malekith. But let's just get the worst part of Malekith over with. Phase 1 is not that good. The main issue with Phase 1 isn't that it's bullshit, because it does have issues, but it is mostly well designed. It's just not a super fun phase. A lot of his attacks don't feel very fun to dodge. And the knife feels too fast, actually. I don't like the double slash combo. Just feels like luck when I dodge it. I still don't know how to dodge it, even after hours of fighting him with the rapier. But to be honest, after refighting him for a long time, it becomes to actually be a bit satisfying really to dodge the combos of Phase 1. Like by the end, when I finally beat him, I was having fun in Phase 1, nearly equal to some other bosses' faces. I'm going to be honest, I may have to put that down to Stockholm Syndrome, because it was either I learned to like Phase 1 or I hated Malekith, and I guess I went for liking Phase 1. But let's be honest, we all know Phase 1 is not the reason he's going to be this high, so let's just get on to the real reason, which is Phase 2. To give you a clue of how good I think Phase 2 is, I feel if Phase 1 were at least a similar level of quality or somewhat close, I feel it could have been rivaling Gale for one of the best bosses, if not the best boss in the series. And I love his fight. It's one of the best in the game, with a unique moveset, as well as actually being too fast for you to just roll spam them, meaning that you have to position yourself, which I feel is what caused a lot of players to call him bullshit, because they just never learned to do that. And I love his lore, it's one of the best in the whole game, being the Shadow of Marika as well as a complete badass, being feared by all the demigods, as well as actually managing to solo all the god skins as to be able to attain death. And I love the tragedy of his lore, having the death rune stolen from him by Ronnie, making him feel that he must actually put it into his skin so that no one else could take it from him, only to make him constantly hunger for death rune, where you'll have to give him the death root, which is how you can meet him as Garank. That's why I could actually tolerate the existence of Phase 1, because I feel it's a great lore-wise thing, and it isn't a horrible fight, it's just not as good, but I feel it takes up too much of his fight. So I feel if they were to put it down to 25% of his HP and 75% was just Malekith, he would be a far better fight and could have possibly even been the best boss in the game. But Malekith is actually a fight I'm very excited to refight, because I feel like he's going to get better for me, and it was actually the second hardest boss in the game for me when I used to Ripper, by quite a large margin, even surpassing Radahn. Because I feel Malekith is actually able to balance out his relatively low HP due to the fact that he drains your max HP, which can even make beefy builds struggle against him, which I feel is a perfect balance and made him very tough in a fair and fun way. But, you know, the boss is only going to get better from here, so we'll have to see for the future to see if Malekith will actually be able to surpass them for me, because they are all excellent beyond here. I don't think any other boss can surpass them, unlike Prestigious X and Fortis X, who I feel, while at the moment my favourites, I feel another boss could technically go up above them in replay. We'll have to see. Anyways, Malekith, Phase 1, Phase 2, amazing. Next boss. Now let me just start this off by saying that basically all of my top 7 are actually S tier worthy. It's more down to personal preference for me, so you know, where they go, it's really, I'm not saying any of these are better than the other, they're all amazing. Because in my opinion, Moog is arguably the second most flawless fight in the game. The only issue with their fight is just I find the physique and the shackle a bit too good. Physique would be fine, but I think the fact that you can just melt their health bar when you're fighting them is a bit too good for it. But the fight for Moog is just so fun. I love dodging their combos. They are really slow, which is very unique, and also I suck at those. So I found them quite tough, probably being the third toughest boss, maybe second toughest. I'd have to see where them and Malekith place, but they are incredibly tough. Phase 1 for Moog isn't actually too bad. It's mostly just dodging their combos, and it's extremely satisfying because after a while, because of their gimmick with the healing where you basically lose 3 healing every fight, I actually by the end was destroying Phase 1. It was the most satisfying feeling after struggling on it for so long and learning their moveset and when you can attack and what type of attacks you can use. And also I just think that their theme is absolutely one of the best, probably in the whole series. It really fits his atmosphere and is also extremely catchy. Probably the best theme in the game, bar maybe 1 or 2, but still, amazing theme. I also love the Phase 2. I find that it's actually amazing. Probably one of the most fun parts in the entire game. I love the way that he has new openings, just as when he's using the blood shower, you can now hit his wings, and also he still is slow. He's just feels faster due to his increased aggression and new attacks. But Phase 2 is also amazing. Yet with all these things, why can I not say that Moog is actually higher on my list? And to be honest, that's just down to preference. As you'll see with the future of the list, I like the more agile bosses, and Moog just isn't that type of boss for me. So it just, while he's amazing and I can't say there's much flaws with him, which boss am I more excited to refight? And I'm more excited to refight the 6 ahead of him. But still, even if Moog isn't the top 7 for me, the fact that he managed to get this high without even fitting my own preferences just shows how amazing a fight that Moog truly is. So Moog is truly an amazing fight, but let's just get on to number 6 because this video is getting quite long. Okay, I think we're finally on to a non-controversial placement, because I'm pretty sure everyone agrees Radahn is fantastic. The only controversy you'll hear will just be, it should be higher. It's not like Prestigious X, we believe it should be top 3. And to be honest, Margit was tough, so was Godric, but I feel Radahn was my first massive long loading rate, taking 8 hours on my first playthrough, and 4 on my second. Now before we can get on to all of Radahn's positives, which are many, let me just say my one issue with Radahn's fight, which is I feel the shotgun arrows at the start of the fight feel a bit bullshit, and I've never managed to dodge them without just feeling lucky. Now on to all the other great things, because that is literally my only issue with Radahn. First off is Leonard. I mean his lore, but mainly the enemy. Honestly, Radahn may have my favourite lore of all the bosses in the game. It's just so interesting. As you see him in the trailer, he seems like this villain who's standing above the smaller Melania. But he's actually, you can even tell in the video with him picking up his blades after, that he is truly a honourable warrior. And he's built up as the mightiest of the demigods, and he truly lives up to that lore because, dear lord, is he tough. I don't know if I just suck at Radahn or something, because I find he has some of the hardest attacks to dodge in the entire game, and they are extremely hard hitting. And before he was balanced by low HP, because you would fight him after Morgoth, but then they nerfed him, which meant that I had to fight him before Morgoth, so it actually made it a bit tougher, because I was doing lower damage, and my HP made it so it was similar damage to before. Thank God they mostly rebuffed him. The sheer ferocity of Radahn is insane. His attacks are tough to dodge and do high damage. The phase 2 transition is one of the coolest things ever. Oh my god, my first time I was just stunned and kind of just instantly died because I just stopped moving. Nearly dropped my controller, to be honest. But still, you may be wondering, why isn't Radahn higher? And to be honest, it's 99% down to the same reason as Morgoth. It's just preference. Because I just personally find Radahn is one of the few bosses on this top 10 that actively frustrated me. That wasn't because of a run-up or anything. And I don't think that's a big negative because I still enjoyed him overall, but the fact he actually made me mad, I feel does knock him down in enjoyment for me. Still, the fact that Radahn's only number 6 really shows how tight this top 10 really is. Still, on to number 5, we are halfway there now. I'm getting tired. So we're already at S tier, which is quite insane. Most of the games would have around 3 S tier bosses, while Elden Ring has 5 for me. And not even like low S tier. I'd say Godfrey is pretty high for me. I would say that, to be honest, all of the bosses from this point besides number 1 and 2 are completely interchangeable for me. The only reason Godfrey is the lowest is because he took the longest for me to love. They were around below Mog and Radahn until my second playthrough, which means I'm not safe with putting them too high right now. But still, Godfrey is an amazing boss. They are, in my opinion, the least flawed boss in all of Elden Ring. They don't really have any flaws. I guess the only flaw would be they are a bit easy, not like low challenge, but they were, you know, pretty mid difficulty for me, which is quite disappointing for the first Elden Lord. That's with straws though, because Godfrey is just such an insanely fun fight, especially phase 1. I love how fluid it is, as you kind of just automatically mix in jumps and dodges in a fluid way. It doesn't feel like you're being forced to do any move in particular. And I love the theme. It's just so regal, and it really fits his voice actor, who feels like a regal, kingly figure. Which is just, it's such a fantastic theme, the way it blares in the background. It really makes it feel like we're fighting the pinnacle of royalty. And then you get to phase 2, where he proceeds to kill the lion that I feel 99% of players thought he was actually joined forces with to fight you. I actually feel the voice actor for Godfrey did a great job in this cutscene. Besides the warrior part, which I feel, I don't know, it's just something off about it. Maybe it's just, I don't actually know, it's just there's something off with the warrior part. Phase 2 was actually the main reason I didn't know where to put Godfrey until my second playthrough, as the first time I fought them, they were very scary and I ran away like a little baby. And then in my second playthrough I decided to fight them up close, and up close they are honestly as good, if not better than phase 1, and phase 1 is already one of the best phases in the game. Phase 2 is just such a unique part of the fight, and it really is terrifying, as I'm just, you do panic a lot, as he's just, every attack feels like he's genuinely going for your skull, and it's just really fun but also extremely terrifying. It's a bit like phase 1 has a rhythm, phase 2 grabs your face, slams into the rhythm, breaks the rhythm, and now your face is broken as well as the rhythm. And the way this shows his lore is you find out that the entire time this powerful Godfrey was actually weakening himself just to be Elden Lord, and this is his true power. I love about phase 2 is that it's one of the only times that phase 2 and 1 in Elden Ring are extremely different, and in my opinion, Godfrey does it the best of all of them, as Malekith's phase 2 is far better than phase 1, same for Renala, and I just find that Godfrey is a perfect balance. So yeah, I feel that Godfrey could definitely go up with time. They could enter my actual top 10 if they're good enough on replay, but for now, they're number 5 for me. That's how I feel, and we'll see how that changes. let's get on to number 4. It's not going to get any calmer. God, putting Godric this low actually hurts me. To give you a hint as to how good Godric is, he was actually in my top 10 until the other 3 took them out of my top 10. Godric was by quite a lot my most hyped boss in the game. For basically all of the marketing, they have my favorite design, still probably of all the bosses. Their team is top 4-3 in the entire game and one of the best in the series. And their fight is so good. They have such fun, satisfying moves to dodge, and they're agile, but also in a fair way that makes this like feel tough early on. But as you get on later, you still find them a good challenge. You know, they're not a pathetic joke, but not too hard when you fight them again, but they're always fun. The only thing I can think of as a flaw for Godric is a Godfrey. Fuck Godfrey. They make Godric less unique. I don't know why FromSoft added Godfrey. To be honest, they're basically a tie with number 3 for me. Maybe even more, I'd like Godric in the future, but at the moment I feel that the first time fighting, number 3 was just so much better that I had to put them above for now, but Godric is still that good. I love Godric's fight, and the wombo combo, where he just does multiple hits, is still probably the most fun attack to dodge in the game, and one of my favorites in the series. And did I even mention how he does stuff such as laughs during the fight, which just shows his pure insanity and how little he cares for human life. And just when you think Godric can't get any better, they go into phase 2 with one of the coolest cutscenes in the whole series, let alone in Elden Ring. He literally cuts his own hand off so he can attach a dragon to it. The only reason I was not completely stunned by this and able to continue talking about it is the fact that it was in the trailer, which was still the coolest part of the whole trailer. Phase 2 for Godric is a perfect example of how even when they do not change a lot fight-wise, what they do change is enough to make it feel like a completely unique experience. Adding the dragon head to him gives him new attacks and changes a lot of his attacks, giving him longer hitboxes with his arm slams, or giving him added flames to his super spinny move or whatever it is. And the best part of Phase 2, and the part that I'll never get sick of, is his theme. Phase 2 especially, but the overall theme as well, is just so good. One of the best in just the whole franchise. It's just such a badass theme. And the complexity of his design, it's multiple separate limbs, and then even with all this complexity, they decide to cut off his arm and add a dragon head as well. So that's a whole new appearance for him. This is just one boss. Godric is so good that even though Stormveil is actually one of my favorite areas in the whole series, I literally just want to run through it so that I can get to Godric to fight them again. And sure, while Godric's not topping any difficulty lists, they're actually just a really fun fight for me, and I'm literally convincing myself right now out loud that I want to put them back into my top 10 FromSoft bosses. And I really want to fight them again, so luckily they're early. Just really an amazing fight and did not disappoint for all the hype that I had for them, and it's only going to be getting better from here. Okay, I feel like this isn't a shock as Morgott is probably one of the most fun fights just in the entire series, let alone Elden Ring. Let me just say, the two reasons they're actually not higher is simply, first, I just don't find them as challenging as they should be. They took me around an hour my first time, but still, they were kind of easier than even Margit, let alone the higher tier bosses, which makes them on replays, means that you don't get to fight them as much, which is sad because they're one of the most fun fights. I also find that Phase 2 could be a bit more unique, as I find it's mostly just the same as Phase 1, but with some new moves, which, sure, really fun, but I would have liked if they did something like Abyss Watchers, added something like an after effect, to at least make it feel different. So why with both those issues are they still above Godric for me? Well, the reason is as simple as they're just so fun, it's harder for me to actually put them lower. And they are still tied, I just personally find Morgott a insanely fun fight. They have some of the most fun moves to dodge, with a large variety as well as being extremely agile, which as I've stated is my preferred type of fight. It kind of reminded me of nearly a mix of Gale Phase 1 and 2, which I love Gale, so not complaining there. Morgott I was actually sad to beat because I was just having so much fun fighting them, I didn't want it to end already. Morgoth is actually the main reason I would like them to do with the inner bosses like they did with Sekiro, because if Morgoth had an end game moveset as well as a more unique phase 2, they could go up to like at least Nadir tier for me. But still, even with those issues, Morgoth is just such a fun fight. It's actually hard for me not to put them this high, because they're just, sure they're easy, but then again, they don't have to be hard to be an enjoyable fight, and Morgoth is an incredibly enjoyable fight. And the lore of Morgoth is incredible. Honestly, it's hard to explain because it's very complex, and Vadi hasn't made a video on it yet, but I would suggest you watch a lore video on him because it is very good lore. Arguably top 10 in the game. Top 10 to 3 in the entire game. So yeah, Morgoth is number 3 because they have amazing lore and an amazing fight. The only reason they're not higher is due to difficulty, and I feel the other 2 bosses have just as great a fight, and also they both have a good bit of challenge. I don't know if this will be a surprise or not that they're my second favorite boss in the game, as I've heard a lot of love and hate for them. But I absolutely adore their fight, and they're my second favorite final boss in the series, only behind Sword Saint Ishin. Radagon just reminds me of the Twin Princes, which are actually my hardest boss in all of base Dark Souls 3, mainly down to the fact that I struggle to heal against them, which he also is very hard to heal. But what I love about Radagon is that just learning to master his fight is genuinely one of the most satisfying things in the game, as you can get him down super quickly when you start getting good at it. I also feel that while never the hardest boss, I actually really put them down for not being super hard. I find that on replay they are a similar difficulty. They are always a considerable challenge, which means they will always remain fun, even if never the hardest. And then when the Elden Ring soundtrack actually starts playing in the background, that is one of the most hype scenes in the entire game. My one issue with their fight, which is really the definition of a nitpick, is their teleport. I find it's an attack with the dodge you really can't see as you build up another attack. So you may get hit by the second attack, which it's not horrible, but you know, I made a rule to at least make one criticism of each boss, so you know, this is what he's getting. So yeah, Radagon is already one of the most fun fights. They'd probably already get on this list if it was just them. They're that fun. But then, after you defeat Radagon, you have one of the most weird and spectacular phase changes in the entire series. Like, to be honest, describing what happens is nearly impossible to actually fully say without just looking at it, because just watching him, this weird creature, pick him up and use him as a blade, and the soundtrack, oh, it's one of the most atmospheric soundtracks in the whole series. It's such an amazing intro. And then you meet Elden Beast, which, first of all, design, one of the best in the series. It's amazing, but it's also the most, probably, I wouldn't even say divisive boss. I'd say it's just not very just not liked at all, actually, by most of the fans. So the question is, what is my opinion on Elden Beast? Now I will say that this may be very controversial, but I do not think Elden Beast is as good as Radagon. I think it's even better. Because after my first playthrough, I was just a bit like, you know, okay, I loved it a lot, loved it more than Radagon, but that may just be the spectacle of the fight. I'll probably like Radagon more in replay. But when I refought them, I just fell even more in love with Elden Beast in particular. Now I will critique Elden Beast one aspect, which is I feel Elden Stars, or whatever that move is, I do not like that it stuns you. If it didn't stun you, then I'd be perfectly fine with it. Now on to two big things about Elden Beast. One is that people think you should be able to ride Torrent for them. I will say, at first I believed that was a good thing because I just thought, oh, it runs away, Torrent can chase. But I actually love the added challenge of having to run after it on foot. And it's not even that long. Really, as long as you begin chasing as soon as it swims away, you can get to it pretty quickly. And just the arena being this lake surrounded by many Erd trees as you're fighting this godlike being. It's just, it's probably top two best arenas in the series. Can't say between it or Gale's. And I love dodging its attacks. Its attacks are so fun to dodge. They're so weighty and spectacle-like. I love dodging them. Every single move, for me, is amazing. Even Elden Stars, if it didn't stun, it would have been a great move as well, in my opinion. By the way, Elden Beast's grab, best grab in the series. No regrets. Just Elden Beast is an amazing boss, and I'm just tired of saying I don't like it, because I do, and I like it more than Radagon, and I have zero regrets saying that. So, minor spoiler for the video, Elden Beast is my favorite beast boss in the entire game. though I don't know if you can fully count them because Radagon is not a beast boss, and the fact that they're not the best boss in the game just shows how amazing Elden Ring's roster truly is. Now, I'm not going to do a honorable mentions because that would spoil the next video on what bosses aren't on it, so we're just going to go on to number 1. I never thought that Elden Ring could make a boss that could surpass Gale, and yet here we are. This boss is how you do a gank boss. It's just fantastic. Okay, I can't do this more. Fuck this boss. Piece of trash. Yeah, I don't think it's a massive surprise that Melania is my favourite boss, unless of course you're someone who hates Melania. Now I will say, I do not think Melania is a flawless boss. I already told you Godfrey and Mog are less flawed than her. But I find that she's the boss that I've had the most fun and also feel a challenge from, as a lot of the bosses in Elden Ring that were higher up on the list began to be pretty mid difficulty instead of high difficulty, which are bosses that I prefer. Now let's just get my one issue out of the way, which is that I find that when I used a rapier on her, it actually didn't stun her, which made it an unoptimal weapon, so I had to actually switch that playthrough. It only really happens from my research with torches, which who cares, knives, rapiers and spears. So it's not too bad, and every boss has the weapon like that, but I feel like it is still an issue to critique about her fight. I feel like this would be a bigger issue if it weren't Elden Ring, which is very much about switching out your builds. So in some ways you could argue it to be a positive, even if I personally think forcefully switching is I'm not the biggest fan of it. Now, before we get into my positives, which are many, let me just get the 2 biggest complaints about Melania out of the way, which is waterfowl dance and the healing. Now let me just get the heal out of the way, which is, I like the heal. Sure, some complaints about the shields I can understand, as should she heal through that, but you gotta realize if she didn't heal through that, shields would just destroy her and it wouldn't really be a challenge for shield users. But what I like about the heal is that it makes it so you have to actually learn her, as a lot of bosses that get stunned, even Frida, who I'd say is the hardest Dark Souls boss, can just kind of get stun locked, which her heal makes it so that you can't do that, as she can just heal it back, so you have to actually learn her moves and dodge them. And I love the way that due to her heal, she actually gets really short on your successful attempts because you just stop getting hit as much, which means she's just a low health boss. Now waterfowl. Waterfowl is a hard one to explain, but let me explain why I like waterfowl. The reason is I feel like it just adds such a unique experience to the boss that even though it does have negatives, I feel the positives outweigh it. And the thing about waterfowl is that you can dodge it, like with multiple tactics. You can use Bloodhound Step, you can use a shield, it works. Or you can use the distance strat. You can also throw a pot at her, I'm pretty sure, which is just an hilarious strategy. But you can also do the circle strat, which is god tier, but it is very possible. I've seen people do it who are not like speedrunners or anything. Or you can do just roll to her left side. You'll take damage, sure, but then again, it's chip damage. It's not high damage. Like, it's tolerable. I wouldn't even say her move is really the worst in the game. I personally think moves such as Godskin Noble's roll, because that move just never ends. Her move is fine and it's dealable, even if you can take chip damage from it. Just roll it. Now I will say, I'm not saying this move is like amazing, never unfixable, flawless move. It does have the flaws. Should a move ever be near undodgeable at a certain range without much build up, that is an issue, but I personally think people overblow it as a move that literally ruins your fight, when it's really not that bad. Now on to the actual fight, because I've just been explaining I do not dislike parts of it, on to what I like about it. First of all, I love phase 1 and how it teaches you, because she's pretty passive in it, and the music shows that it's calming music, and she's pretty passive in phase 1 as well. You just need to learn how to react to attacks, which means that you'll actually have time to figure out phase 2 without it feeling overwhelming, which I think is great design. I love the way it even gives you time to practice before waterfowl becomes an interval, and gives you a specific time where waterfowl will arrive, so you can prepare emotionally to learn how to dodge it. Things like that I think are excellent design. And I remember the feeling of dread I got when I finally got her to half health and nothing happened, because that told me that she was going to change phases when she dies. And then I finally got her down, and I saw one of the coolest cutscenes in the entire series, let alone Elden Ring. Her design is amazing. It's a mix of elegant but also slightly disgusting and badass as well. It's just amazing design. And then you actually get to phase 2, which is, to be honest, probably my favourite fight in the entire game. I love her theme, probably the best theme in the entire game, and one of the best in the whole series, and her new speed is really fun to fight, and agile, which I've said I love, as well as just being really well balanced for even probably the slowest weapons, unless you use a rapier, because then you can't stun her, but the fact that you stun her means that you can actually get hits in without it feeling like, oh well, now she's going to hit me back so I can't get a hit there. So I feel it's really well done. And while I was at first concerned because she used Scarlet Rot, which is toxic, which was actually my one issue with the Demon Prince as well, because it can just mean a game over, I feel she does it well as it's fitting for her characters, and all of her toxic attacks are very clearly shown, and are also some of her new most fun attacks to dodge, and do not stack extremely fast like the Demon Prince's attacks can. So she also has some of the most fun movesets for me to dodge. I find all of her attacks incredibly fun, and the only attack that ever really got close to frustrating me, which I never actually got frustrated on with, which is just another additive to how great a fight she is, but the only attack that ever actually made me get slightly agitated was her super quick slashes, but they're also quite easily dodgeable by just dodging forward then dodging back through the next swipe, so they're not even a bad attack, they just took me a while to learn. And by the way, she is, in my opinion, the hardest FromSoft boss by a mile. Gonna be honest, the original being Orphan, yeah, they don't stand a chance compared to her. She's like them, but she also heals herself and has the hardest move in the entire series to dodge that isn't just undodgeable bullshit. And even with her challenge taking me around 12 hours, if not more, to beat because I kept switching between her attempts and going forward in the story, I never got frustrated. Even though I had multiple really close attempts, I was fine with it because I was enjoying her fight that much. As it was really clear to see improvement, so every time I died, I just thought, well, at least I'm going forward in it, especially in phase 1, where at first it would take me 5 minutes and I'd have 0 flasks by the end, but by the end, it would take me 2 minutes easily to beat it. To give you a clue of how much I love their fight, they're the only boss on this list that is S+ tier, which a total of 6 other bosses are in the entire series. To give you a clue of how good I feel Malenia truly is, Halictree could be one of my top 10 in the entire series. My only issue with it is the enemies are a bit but still, really fun area, absolutely adore it. Yet, I'm going to be honest, I'm probably just going to run through it nearly every time just because I want to fight Malenia that bad. Just Malenia, sure, not the most perfect fight, but she is by quite a large margin my favorite boss in the entire game, and I really cannot wait to see what FromSoft makes next. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any criticisms or just anything you want to say, please say in the comment section. I'd love to hear it, and thanks for watching. Okay, that's the end of the top 10, so you can leave now if you don't really care for the rest. I'm just going to talk about my overall feelings on Elden Ring and mainly its boss roster. Now, Elden Ring is a tale of 2 boss rosters. One is if you only count the Remembrance bosses. If you only count them, they arguably have the best base game roster in the entire series, and second best overall if you count Dark Souls 3 and Ring City, which is amazing. But it is a different story if you decide to count great enemies as bosses, as even some of the average ones that I don't dislike just don't really stand up to bosses, a lot of the time being less complex than even mid-game bosses while they're endgame. Now, that's, I'd say around, if you count great enemies as bosses, they're around just above Bloodborne for me, both suffering similar issues of some just mostly but some great ones that really carry it, though I do personally prefer Elden Ring's roster because it has more highlights that aren't just DLC exclusives. Now, while I do adore Elden Ring's roster, in my opinion, if you go off only Remembrance, which is, I feel, a fair way to go off it, though I do think Great Enemies is also fair, its roster is nearly all fantastic, me only being with one of them. But I will say that even Melania, who's the top of my list of this boss and is fantastic, I can't put her even above Midir. Which, sure, Midir is a fantastic boss, but it is sad because that means Elden Ring is at the moment the only FromSoft new IP of Bloodborne, Sekiro, Dark Souls where I have no bosses just in my top 3 absolutely adore S+++ tier like they have with Ishin, Maria and Gale. But hey, Bloodborne didn't have one until its DLC and Dark Souls didn't have one until Gale a couple games later. So you know, Elden Ring, let's hope for the hopeful Mikula DLC and that will give us the amazing boss that I can say stands up there with Gale and the others. But as a whole, I can say that Elden Ring is probably my second or third favorite game of all time. I absolutely adore it. Sure, it has some duds with like lazy design, but you know, when it has this many positives, you can really overlook its duds. I will mention two disappointments I've had with the game is their beast bosses and their Genk bosses. See, beast bosses, they are horrible. Fortisax, Prestigisax, Elden Beast, all amazing, but Elden Beast is half a fight, not a full fight, and to be honest, after Sekiro, which had a pretty constricted roster of, it was mostly humanoids, I was really excited to see what Genks and beasts we could get. But the beasts were all good but not amazing, and the Genks were all some of the worst in the series. The fact that I can say Dragon Rider Duo is better than every single Genk in this game is genuinely shameful. Like, the thing about the Genks is they're not even just bad, they're lazy. Like, nearly all of them are just lazily designed NPCs, regular enemies, 2 other bosses put in a room. Come on, FromSoft, you made Demon Prince, you made Ornstein of Smoke, you made Dark Lurker, and yet you're coming out with this beginner stuff. To be honest, I feel that even with great enemies, if it weren't further lazily done Genks, the game could have had the best roster just in the series for the base game, no DLC included. Dark Souls 3 still may have beaten it, but that's what I think it could have been if it weren't for those lazy bosses. Still, I'll go into more detail about that hopefully soon in my worst bosses in the game list, so do expect a lot of Genk bosses. But besides those 2 issues, the game is absolutely fantastic. If the DLC can give us a Gale tier boss, a good Genk, and a great beast, like S tier beast, I feel this game could be my new favorite game, even surpassing Dark Souls 3, which is insane. Anyways, it's nearly been, if not actually been, 40 minutes, so I feel like I need to end the video now. So, goodbye, and if any of you actually struggled your way through this video, thanks a lot for watching.